Uncle Tom's Cabin. Chapter 2. Leaving home. The next morning, Mrs. Shelby knew that Eliza had run away with Henry. Oh dear, thought Mrs. Shelby. Mr. Haley will kill Eliza if he catches her. Mr. Haley was very angry when he heard Eliza had run away. Mrs. Shelby decided to slow Mr. Haley down. This would give Eliza a chance to escape. She had an idea. One of her slaves put a small stone under the saddle on Mr. Haley's horse. This made the horse very upset. Mr. Haley was unable to ride the horse for a long time. Finally, he got on his horse and went to look for Eliza. Mr. Haley knew that runaway slaves always went to the Ohio River. If they could cross the river, people in Ohio would help them. Eliza was also desperate to get across the river, but when she reached the river, it was full of ice. No boats could cross the icy river. Eliza prayed to God to help her cross. Mr. Haley saw Eliza and Henry. "Stop," he yelled. "That boy is mine." Eliza was trapped between Mr. Haley and the icy river. So she jumped on a chunk of ice in the river. Then she jumped onto another piece of ice. She wasn't wearing any shoes, and her feet were bleeding. But at last she crossed the river. On the other side of the Ohio River, Eliza saw a man she knew. He was one of the Shelby's friends, Mr. Sims. "Mr. Sims, please help me," cried Eliza. "I know a powerful man who hates slavery," he said. "He will help you. His name is Senator Byrd." Mr. Sims pointed to a nice big house across the street. Eliza went to the house and knocked on the door. Mrs. Byrd let Eliza in. Senator and Mrs. Byrd heard Eliza's story. They agreed to help her reach Canada. Mr. Haley was on the other side of the river. He was very angry. He hired a slave catcher to chase Eliza. Then he went back to the Shelby's farm to get Tom. Back at the Shelby's farm, Uncle Tom sat in his cabin. He was reading the Bible, and Chloe cried, "If only they weren't selling you down south, nobody comes back from there. They kill slaves down there. It's in God's hands now," said Uncle Tom. "I'm thankful that they sold me and not the little ones." He looked lovingly at his sleeping children. There was a knock on the door of the cabin. It was Mrs. Shelby. Mrs. Shelby stood there crying. "It's time to go, my dear man," she said, "but I promise to find out where you are. We will get the money and buy you back." Suddenly, Mr. Haley burst into the room. He said to Tom, "It's time for you to go." He put Uncle Tom in heavy chains. Then they drove away in a wagon. On the way out of town, Mr. Haley stopped at a store. Tom waited outside in the wagon. Young Johnny Shelby followed them on his horse. He jumped in the wagon and hugged Tom. "I hate slavery, Uncle Tom," cried Johnny. Uncle Tom hugged the boy and said, "Now, Master Johnny, you be good to your mother. God only gives you one mother." "I will, Uncle Tom," promised Johnny. He also promised to come down south and buy Uncle Tom. Then they said goodbye.